Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 102.
It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's John Webster and I'm here with Elise Seifert. Hello, Elise.
Hey, John.
What's on your mind today?
Well, I was hoping to discuss an article I found about mindfulness. This article was found on mindbodygreen.com. It's entitled, Mindfulness Without Community Isn't Enough, New Research Suggests. It's written by Sarah Regan, and it was published on August 17th, 2023. This article discusses how mindfulness has become more important in Western cultures and how people are really discovering the practice of mindfulness, and how in our Western culture, we're really seeing it as a personal practice when really it should be more about community. I really loved the concept because I do think community is so important for wellness.
I think this article is great and it came to me at just the right time. I've been thinking about this and I've been having a hard time figuring out what my problem is. And so here's my problem. I find that mindfulness has really great uses. So for example, in a moment of kind of crisis, like not super crisis, but I'm feeling really anxious or my mind is spinning, I find it's useful if I focus on my breath, for example, as an example of mindfulness. Just breathe, come back. Okay, I'm back. I'm calm. Maybe got that out of my mind. Sometimes lately, if it's happening at night, I regroup, try and stop my mind running. And then I actually listen to an audiobook for a few minutes and it tends to knock that thing out of my head.
Nice.
The problem I have though is I hear lots of people talking as if it's kind of the answer to everything.
Yes.
Right? Mindfulness, meditation. But of course, I have a very action-based approach to wellness, that there's a whole bunch of categories of wellness and there's a whole bunch of activities you need to be doing. And it seems to me like the mindfulness is kind of solo for the most part in what I hear people talk about.
Exactly. So everyone's focusing on the mindfulness activities such as meditation, which really is a solo activity that you're doing by yourself. But really, we want to think about how can we bring the community into our mindfulness.
Yeah, and I don't know that really the article tells us exactly how to do that, but it does suggest that there is a community-based approach that you can use, and it can help us in things like the escalating violence in the world, climate change, rising cost of living. I guess what they're saying is we have to be mindful in all of the things that we do. It's not just an exercise to calm you down or to find inner peace.
Yes, I love that. And I think it's kind of talking about how to be more sympathetic or how to really care for others and thinking about yourself and your mindfulness, but then also thinking about how can I treat others and be respectful. I like some of the examples they give about being mindful in a community setting, such as listening to your loved ones, pausing before you give into road rage on your commute, or starting a loving kindness meditation practice. I'm not sure what a loving kindness meditation practice totally entails, but I imagine it's something where you're sending love or kindness to others through meditation.
And definitely, I know people talk about when they meditate, they're trying to feel a connection outside themselves. I think for the most part, though, people are trying to find a state. They're trying to feel something. They're using their mantras and whatnot to try and get to a state, which is fantastic. And even if that's part of your everyday life, you then, I think, need to find other ways to be mindful. I'll give you a little example. Lately, I've been trying more and more to feel in the moment in the sense of my senses, especially if I'm exercising or if I'm outside going for a walk. What does the sky look like? What do the trees look like? What's the wind doing to the leaves? What animals are close to me? What sounds and smells? The first time it happened most recently where it really connected was I heard waves coming in when I was running. And as I said in one of my pop-ups, it felt like all of a sudden I was thinking, hey, this is kind of helping me feel connected to things outside myself, maybe even the cosmos.
Amazing.
I don't know, but I think you can use that kind of mindfulness to focus on your connections with the world and other people too.
I love that.
One of the things that I think what they're saying here is if we have problems in the world, and they talk about being curious, which I suspect is part of kind of a mindfulness exercise through meditation, you're letting yourself be curious and letting your thoughts flow. Why can't we start thinking about the needs of the community in the world and let ourselves be curious and let our minds flow, and who knows what ideas will come to us?
Yes. And I think being mindful is being present. So being present to the needs of others is so important. I know I've been trying to practice more mindfulness recently just because it's been hectic time at work. So I find myself wishing away days, thinking, okay, I just got to get through this day. I just got to get through this day. And I find myself trying to step back and think about how much I'm needed in this day to be present and how important it is for me as a teacher to be present for my students and make sure that I'm enjoying this time, not just wishing the time away, which can be really hard sometimes.
No, that's a really good one. I never really thought of that context, but it's sad, right? If you're finding yourself, I just wish this day would end.
Yes.
That's a really unfortunate place to be. And is there any way to turn it into, okay, I'm in this crappy situation, but what can I do? How can I turn this into something different? I've been reading these books lately, and I've been doing some other pop-ups about the concept of connection. So for example, you're going to hear one about whatever service you're providing, whatever product you're making, if you can connect with the reason why you're making it and the use that somebody will make from the product, or what people are getting from your teaching, for example, if you can connect with that, it kind of gives you the incentive to figure out the best way to do it and get through a situation. So if there was some way, maybe you could use mindfulness in that context. Like, I want to take a minute here to try and focus on, what am I doing as a teacher? Like, what is the good goal here? And
Yes.
maybe the answers will start to come to you, not just, I want my day to end.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do. What am I looking forward to today? Or what's something special that's going to happen today that I'm really excited about? Or reflecting on the day before. What was something that I really liked that happened? So that helps to ground me. But I think community is so important. And I do think when I read this article, it reminded me of this podcast.
Oh, that's good.
And the community aspect that we have surrounding well-being. And I thought that this is exactly what we're doing, and how much being a part of this podcast and listening to the podcast has helped my well-being. So I thought it really connected well to our message in this podcast.
Well, yeah, and one of our messages is our best chance of wellness is together. But the key message, if you don't take anything else from our podcast, the key message is, if you want to start making improvements in your overall well-being and work towards balance, you have to act. You have to do things. And while mindfulness, I think, is a great activity for a specific purpose, you've got to use it for its purposes, but you still have to do a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's not a substitute. I'm not judgy, and I don't argue with people, but when I do hear people talking about how amazing meditation is or mindfulness is, I think, well, I'm glad, but that's not the answer for me. I need lots more, and I need lots more activities. And, starting with figuring out, what are the parts of my life that affect my wellness and what activities foster that? Then I can start doing things.
I think that's an amazing message. And I think that's a really important point where you really have to find what works best for you.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the categories of mental and social wellness. It's the first of 2 interviews of Chris Costa. And in this first, we hear how Chris got into trouble when young, ending in prison, then taking steps forward and back, including abusing substances, and ultimately finding a way to be a positive actor for change and hope. And next time we'll hear how Chris chooses love over fear while giving back to the community. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, John.
Chris Costa is an entrepreneur, athlete, and a passionate community builder. He uses a love of running and sports to create positive change for others. He founded Change in Motion, a community support project that raises awareness and funds to support families experiencing domestic violence. He spoke about his experiences as a TEDx speaker. He's competed internationally for Team Canada as a masters athlete in the men's 400 and 800 events on 3 occasions. Most recently, Chris walked 24 hours as part of his fundraiser to support Women's Crisis Services, Camino Mental Health and Wellbeing, and the Grand River Hospital Foundation. And you can find him on Sunday evenings as a volunteer at the Grand River Hospital Emergency Room. So Chris, I'd like to ask about your life experiences today and eventually feeling the need to change. So can we start by you telling us a little bit about growing up?
Sure. I have 2 younger siblings. They're 18 months and 8 years behind me, and they're both women. growing up for us was fairly typical to a point. I guess somewhere when I was in grade 1 or 2, so I guess, 8 or 9 years old, maybe even a little bit younger, our family started to struggle and we found ourselves split apart. My father going his way and my mother, my sisters and I going another. At that age, it's sort of a challenging experience because, you don't understand all the whys. And that separation, at least in our experience, and mine specifically, was that it was a sort of a significant fracture where having both parents in the home went to one and the other not really being as present.
And then I know from hearing your TEDx talk, you started down, let's say, the wrong road. And then ultimately, at a certain point, you started to feel like you liked running, and that kind of changed things around for a bit. Tell us a little bit about how things started to go wrong at first.
I guess, that experience in the home, I started to act up. It was something that, was somewhat innocent at first. Mild, mischievous type things in the neighborhood, getting in trouble in class, it slowly started to escalate. But at the exact same time, I had already found running. So there's something going on in school, and I always found it a challenge. I always enjoyed running. And it was at the end of grade school where my trouble began to escalate. And that escalation turned into me, breaking into homes and stealing and, not going to school at all, which did land me into a court system as a delinquent from school, which was met with some guidance to get back into school. And so I did that, starting high school, but then it really started to change. I was grateful, at least at that point in time in my life, where I was connected to running and I found a whole new group of people that were involved in that community, or in that sport, I should say, as I entered high school. Running for me became more serious, but still while in the background, I was getting myself into more and more trouble. Like it just continued to escalate. As I approach, the end of grade 9, I'm stealing cars, I'm drinking, I'm partying. It's just an evolution of that type of experiences.
And then at a certain point, I guess the law caught up to you. Is that the way to express it?
I would say that's probably not the way of putting it. Yeah. At the end of grade 9 or going into grade 10 was probably the first experience that I had with the law, and where the law had eventually just sort of said, well, there are consequences and here they are. And it's time to ship you off, and hopefully you learn some lessons from this experience. And for me, it wasn't anything that I had learned from. Reflecting on those points in my life, when I returned back to just being a normal kid, having served a shorter sentence in a facility at that time, that wasn't a very hardened place to be as a kid. It's away from home, and it's still a bit of, it's still a tough lesson to learn, but it wasn't the toughest lesson yet. And when I got back, I ended up again reconnecting with the sport community in track and field. And I think at that point in time, that's when it really connected for me, that sport and that group of people were like a place that I belonged.
What was it about running in the community? Was there some type of connection you felt?
Yeah, well, the connection was present for sure. And I think it felt for me, at least for the first time, I was being recognized for doing something positive and spending my time in a way that was not being self-destructive or lashing out. And it was almost right away that I was experiencing immediate success. I was a taller, lankier kid, so it was something that was sort of came naturally. It was something that I found a lot of passion for. That sort of middle of high school, I was still continuing to escalate or finding that I wasn't staying far enough away from the trouble that I found myself in, just the year prior. And that's when it started to get bad. And there's probably, there's an element of this that I've glossed over from our conversation about my time before high school. But we had a home that was challenging when it came to domestic violence. We had somebody enter our lives that disrupted it quite substantially. And that was where I found a a lot of my anger came from. It was sort of a dual experience in terms of the place that I held anger. And that anger, of course, was, towards the family unit that I thought was going to be my home dissolving. And then the resentment for having another human in my life who then took it upon themselves to teach me lessons in a way that they felt was appropriate to a child, right? And I think that those were some of the themes that I ended up carrying later and later through life. It came up as themes over time, but at this particular time, sort of midway through high school, it sort of flared itself in its first real big way. And that's when I started to collect a number of charges and offenses with the law. That's at one point, I think I was at the end of this spree of activity, this unlawful activity. I think I collected something like 54 charges. I'm a young man still, and this is quite a significant number for somebody of that age. You shouldn't be in that kind of trouble. I heard the guidance. I knew there was a lot of people out there interested in finding peace for me, but I wasn't there.
It sounds like there was a lot going on, and despite having some positive aspects like running, community, there was a lot of other things going on, and that seemed to be winning out. And I understand at a certain point, you ended up being convicted as an adult and ended up going to prison. And tell us a little bit about that and the experience now in the adult prison.
Sure. The latter part then of what typically, youth spend in high school, I started collecting things that then qualified me to be convicted of crimes as an adult. So I was sentenced to 2 years less a day to Guelph Correctional Center. And that experience was quite eye-opening. I had not yet graduated from high school. I had the passion for running. At some point during that experience, because I had a number of incidents while in there that were eye-opening, and that they showed me that this isn't really a place for me. And there were people letting me know that. There were a number of people that took it upon themselves to make sure that I understood that this wasn't going to be comfortable, because what you're doing, you should have never ended up here.
Is it kind of like a scared straight kind of thing where they're saying you don't want to be here? We're going to make it so
straight with a few additives, I guess.
Okay.
It wasn't. They weren't just strong words.
Right.
They were making sure it was understood, and it was persistent for a period. And I guess during that point in my life, I kept really quiet, and I kind of heard the message, and I reflected on some of the things I'm taking for granted in my own life at that time, and registered in school. And in a short period of time, went from grade 10 to graduating from high school while in the system, and then running again, as much as that's possible in an environment like that.
I remember in your TEDx, you mentioned that you were getting that rough treatment. It sounded like you were saying that the people there were trying to give you that rough treatment in part to say you better straighten out, but it was still rough. And then there was some kind of sports day, and you went out to run, and that's when things luckily started to take a turn for the better, because people saw a different side of you. Yeah,
I think there was those that were giving me a rough time, and I think that it was slowly, as I dedicated myself to getting my education, I think there was more distance between me and that part of the environment. So people were sort of letting me be, and then I continued to just be, focused on what I plan to do. And yeah, and you're right. So that day, it was Labor Day, and it was a 2-day sporting event. And the first day I went out, and there was quite a distance between me and the others, based on some of my previous experiences. And the next day, half the prison was out there watching. And then at that point, it got quiet for me. Yeah, there was no more challenge. I just everybody left me alone. I don't know how best to describe that, but they could see that I was just trying to be myself, and I was just trying to get out of this and just move on. And this just happened to be something that I was good at.
So that gave you a chance to start turning things around. Why do you think you did that? Why do you think you got interested in school and started focusing on studies at that point?
Well, I'll tell you, as a young man, that's a place for contrast. There is a version of the world that at that age, if you're exposed to and you're maybe in the right frame of mind where you realize that there isn't a good long-term life to be had in that direction, the men with the experience they don't want this for themselves. And to see somebody have, an opportunity to make a change, it's something that you get surrounded by, right? You start hearing it and seeing it and feeling it, and it's just like it sort of takes you forward without you really saying anything other than, yes, I'm ready to change. Let's go.
Okay. And so you got the message, fortunately, and you worked hard. And then, as I understand it, when you were released, you decided to keep on that track and you went back to college.
I did. Yeah. I started in technology, maybe just on the cusp of when technology really started to take off. But here in Waterloo region, it's a center for technology and innovation. So I invested in furthering my education and taking on technology as a vocation, and put the same sort of level of effort into learning as much as I could, establishing that I had, skill sets that would be employable, and just moving on with my life.
I know, though, that it's not as simple as turning on a switch, going from, I had some experiences as a youth, I had some issues and family issues, and I had some anger, I got involved in some other stuff. Now, poof, I push a switch and everything's going to go straight up from there. And then you ended up having some more challenges again, even after you went back to college and started trying to turn things around.
Yeah, you say, well, you'd think that putting the time and the effort into your own growth and steering change is alone enough, and it's not. I think one of the things that I experienced is that at that time, I wasn't doing the internal work to address this in long term. So then the more that I left it sitting there unattended, the more it found its way back into my life, and it would always find its way back in ways that I think just ended up creating instability for me. That instability came up in a number of different ways, but it came up in relationships, it came up at work, it came up with friends, and then it would be, back to substances. So there ended up being a bit of a cycle. And then, the cycle would quiet for a little while and then we'd come back. And this kind of went on for a few years. As much as I would have success in my life, and, if you look at the outside, you would think, hey, there's nothing going on over there. And it's likely this is somebody who's probably happy or satisfied with life. And, I probably had a lot to be thankful for. Looking back, there was definitely things and decisions that I had made when I was younger that I'm grateful I made, and commitments that I made and I stuck to that I'm glad I did. But I think during that time too, I did dabble running here and there, but I wasn't taking it as seriously as maybe I have now. A lot of my focus was trying to build career and skills, just trying to get good at things.
At a certain point, did it start to turn around for the better?
No, it got worse. I lost a close friend of mine to suicide. And for me, that's when I had my own sort of demons came to life on their own, I guess. So substances became a daily, every other day type issue. I struggled at work, and I wasn't taking care of myself very well. I think at that point in my life, I was sort of heavy, and I didn't have a whole lot going on other than the work that I was doing. But I wasn't very connected to the world around me, and I felt more like a shell of myself. And that was going on for probably another few years. I ended up with a few scares in 1 week where the substances that I was taking, brought on like a psychosis. In those experiences, that was like the reflection that I needed to I guess, scare me more permanently. Those reflections were like my mortality was starting to look at me, and I wasn't ready to go.
You did come out of it. Can you just tell us a little bit, how did that happen? How did it feel? How did you stay on the upward motion?
Even the upward motion had some setbacks, but generally the trajectory is in what was in one direction to follow my life's, like fulfill my life's, I don't want to say purpose, but live up to the potential to do things in the way that, I wish I would have spent more time doing if I wasn't so blinded by, some of my life experiences that I wasn't talking about at the time, where those substance issues, being visited at home by paramedics, a few times in 1 week. A dear friend there with me at the time, who kept me out of completing my own suicide. Like, I realized I needed help, so I started talking, and I was in therapy, and it was more around grief counseling, understanding what it was about my own grief that I wasn't addressing, and then I returned to running. And that was difficult at first, because you think that when you return that it's as easy as it was before, and I learned some hard lessons there about patience. But I think they were well timed, because I was having to exercise patience throughout every part of my life. Like, everything around me was saying, "You're going to slow this down," and make sure that in that slowing down, that you're paying attention to what's going on with yourself. The few years of grief, and I went to NA meetings and began running. I got a job as a leader, and that was good. It all was going in the right directions. And at the time that I was at a software company here uptown Waterloo, I met somebody who ended up spending 2 years with me as my life coach. And that's when I got the work done. Every Wednesday for 2 years, we focused on just kind of unraveling and unpacking life's experiences so I could accelerate forward.
How long ago was that?
Now, 4 years ago.
Okay, so 4 years ago, we're at a point where you had been able to make the change, and you started the hard work that's associated with making those changes. I think in the next time, then we can take it off from there and see what you did then going forward, and how you've really put that into action to help yourself and other people.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay, well, I'm of mixed minds, because I'm always so grateful for people like you who come and talk on our show and share experiences, which helps to break down stigma and let other people know that they're not alone. The other side of me, though, is I almost feel guilty, because just having this conversation with you, I can tell that it's dredging you back through some memories that maybe aren't the best to dredge through. So I don't know what else to say, but I really appreciate it, Chris. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you giving yourself like this to help other people.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. This past weekend, I was treated to a performance. My mom actually treated my brother and me to a performance of Home Alone, and it was really neat. It was over at the NAC here in Ottawa, and what they did is they played the movie on the big screen and had the orchestra perform the score live along with the film. It was super fun. And we took in a matinee performance, which also meant that there were some kids in the audience, so their reactions just made it extra fun. Contagious laughter, Good stuff. It was really neat from where we were sitting. We were up high, sort of on the right-hand side, and from where we were, I could see over the conductor's shoulder to the monitor that he was using, and it's kind of cool. I've only ever experienced working with a monitor like that one time while I was at school. I was singing in a choir, and one of our choristers was a film composer major, and his project was to score a scene, and part of it included a choir. So we got to work with it, and it's really neat to see this thing in action. Basically, the conductor has his own personal monitor that he's looking at, and he's doing his thing, keeping time for the orchestra, etc. But in addition to just having the film going, there's some key pieces of information and some really cool signals, and it's really cool to watch it happen live. But basically, in the top right corner of the screen, there are two numbers separated by a vertical line. The left-hand number represents which bar of music that you should be on at this point in the score, and the number on the right represents which beat So that just helps the conductor keep right on time. In addition, there are some visual cues that tell if a song is about, or a piece is about to end, or a section is about to transition, if there's a tempo change coming up, really important things like that. And there's a few different visuals that come up, including like a white circle that flashes, a white vertical line that goes across the screen in time, red variations of those to show an upcoming cutoff. Really, really cool stuff to watch. The performance, as you'd expect from something at the NAC, was superb. Skilled musicians, of course, very, very talented. And there was even a full choir in the back behind the main screen. So from them, or for their view, they got to watch the movie, although sort of flipped, right, on the projector screen. Just a good way to spend an afternoon and hang out with family and take in a show. Super fun stuff. Plus, Home Alone. It's a Christmas time classic. I hope you're having a great week. Hopefully you get to take in some music coming up in the next couple weeks as we gear up for the holidays. That's all for me for today. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do. Welcome. Today we are going to talk about cycling class. Sheila here with Noura. Hi.
Hi.
I have never done a cycling class. So why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, there's different kinds. I know that. I mean, I'm not an expert on cycling, but
No. But we both like biking. So you were like, oh, have you ever done a cycling class?
Cycling class, yeah, one of those spin classes. I first got introduced to spin class when I was going to Good Life, and they would have classes, and they'd have, I think what really got me is the music.
Oh.
Some of the music that was chosen for the tracks were just, oh my goodness, like I'd go out and look for them, but yeah, cycling and is a great cardio class. It's more HIIT. Some of the classes that I've done can be like intervals or hills or, mountain climbs. And then in between those, they would have more calmer, but still cardio activities. So, I just, the pump you get after leaving the class and you get a sweat. Like I'm a sweater, so I come out drenched.
I can imagine, right?
It's a great workout.
Great workout. Okay, so I have a few questions for you. First of all, there's obviously a bike for every person. So when you get in there, do you have to sign up for the class or?
Yes.
Right. Because there's like 20 or.
Post-pandemic. Yeah. Before you could walk in and then it first come, first serve.
Okay.
But now I know with some of the gyms in the community, you got to get on the app and sign up and,
Right.
whatever your designated gym, whatever the protocols are.
Okay. And now there's obviously an instructor in front of the class.
Yes, yep.
And they're telling you what to do.
Yep.
Okay. And is it programmed in the machine?
No, it's the instructor telling you, and then
Okay.
you just kind of follow along with the instructor.
Okay. So you can make it as hard or as easy as you want.
With your resistance, yes.
Okay.
Each bike has its own.
Own resistance.
Yep.
So that is good because depending on how hard you want to work or not.
go. Yep.
And then I guess what the instructor's doing is pushing you in the sense, oh, we're going uphill. And then you all have to like stand up.
Sit down or sometimes there's different positions with how you hold your
handlebar.
The handlebars, yes.
Okay.
So sometimes you're leaning in because you're rather than getting your quads, you're getting your hamstrings.
Yes.
Yeah,
you're working the back or your calves or right. Because
Exactly.
you could, if you're standing up a little bit more, you'd be working your calves as well as your ankles.
Yes.
And I can get it now. Yes. I've never done a spin class. And to tell you the truth, to me, it seems I'm a little bit intimidated because I see it all often in movies, like these really intense people. And when I'm out cycling and I'm going up a hill, it's intense.
It is.
Right? So I'm like, oh no, they're going to make us go up a hill for 10 minutes, right? But it's not quite like that because I'm imagining, how when you're on a treadmill, you can set it.
Yes.
So it goes harder and then goes easy and hard. I thought that it was something like that, but it's not.
No.
So, you can still not go crazy.
Yep. I think too, the camaraderie of being in a class and everyone's hype man, it really adds to the experience.
So the teacher must be pretty intense.
Oh yeah.
Like they're like, go, like the enthusiasm.
Like that. Yeah.
Right. You need that push sometimes. Because if you don't feel like doing it, you just kind of go and you're like, whatever. They can tell that you're not. So it's like, come on, you need more.
You'll hear people in the back being like, woo, or they'll give a little chant, after especially doing a hard track. It's like that feeling of relief. It's just so euphoric.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you need that. And when you said you like the music, do they cycle to the tempo?
So the gym I'm specifically talking about is Good Life, and they use a program called Les Mills. It's actually, I believe they're out of Australia or New Zealand.
Okay.
And the tracks, the RPM is what the class is called.
Okay.
And each track has its assigned song, and then the instructors would know the choreography with the songs. But some of the choreography links so well with the songs that some people will request, can you do that track again?
Great.
It's a really great
That's
class.
really neat. So it's almost like Zumba.
Yeah.
Right? In the sense that they have the same thing where they have the song and the choreography is known.
Yes.
Right? So if everyone in the class, if they've done it before, they pretty much know it or they get to know it, the choreography. So once you hear that music, you guys know exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
Oh, that's
You're
really
into
interesting.
Yep.
So I love cycling but I've only cycled outside. And for me, biking is almost a mode of transportation.
Yes.
Like I really love to go somewhere, even if I'm just going to visit someone or going to the grocery store or biking to work. Yeah. I feel like almost like I'm killing two birds with one stone, getting exercise, but also. So that's really, I should definitely try it because I'm sure I would love it.
You would. It's cycling is so, and I'm sure this is the same with running. Like there's so much freedom in it, with just the air and all that. Yeah.
Yes, you get to enjoy. Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Sheila.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. One of the chapters in my book is called Chance Favors Only the Prepared Mind, which is a quote by Louis Pasteur. The way I read that is to say that if you've prepared yourself intellectually or even physically, however, and something appears in front of you and you're ready to understand what it means or how to take advantage of it, poof, off you go. And it felt really lucky, but it was lucky because you were ready for it. That kind of feeling happened to me recently when I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I'm going to have a few running pop-ups about that. Quick point, again, it's a longish book and it's maybe not approachable for everyone. There's a lot of kind of technical philosophy talk, but to me it's something I enjoy, something that's in my wheelhouse, as I've said. So this one relates to something that he talked about in part 3 in chapter 25. Much of the book is him recounting a journey for someone who's trying to figure out what quality is. What is quality? But that's not even really the main point of what popped up into my head as I was running today. I was more focused on how this discussion can apply to everyday life. He was asking the question about modern technology. People talk about technology being ugly. And there's a bunch of people, and some of his friends in the book were like this. They obviously didn't like technology. They weren't comfortable with it. They didn't like talking about it. Everything got sent to the shop to get fixed, that kind of stuff. Makes them uncomfortable. And there's lots of people who kind of feel that association with technology, thinking, I don't know, it's ugly or whatever. And he eventually comes to the point where he recognizes it's not the actual products themselves, in themselves, that are ugly. But it's also not the people producing them that are in themselves ugly. So what is it? He talks about the ugliness coming from the relationship between the subject and object. The relationship between the people and the things that they're making. And that things is a loose term. That could be a service. You could be like me, a lawyer, providing services to clients. It could be an actual thing. And what it's missing if it's ugly is a connection between the person who's making the object or providing the service and the object they're creating or the service they're providing. There's not a connection, maybe because the person doesn't really appreciate it. What I'm taking from this is almost that you're treating what you create, what you provide as art, right? So think about an artist and think about an artist who's not performing art, because they know that if they create this piece of art, they'll make enough money to pay rent or whatever. Think about an artist who's just inspired. They see something in their mind and they want to create it. And let's say it's a painting. And let's say in their mind, the painting has certain brush strokes. That's how it has to look in one section and other brush strokes in another section. So that means that they realize as they're starting to create it, they have to learn how to do those brush strokes. They have to learn that technique. And then maybe there's a kind of particular color that they need to find. So they have to learn how to mix the paints to get that color. There's a whole bunch of techniques they're going to have to learn to bring this creation to life. Why? Because they're connected to it. They're connected to what they're trying to develop. And it more just kind of emerges through their use of skill to create this perfection. And what's missing when things are ugly is that lack of connection, right? So you can imagine any job that you have. Imagine if you were connected to the outcome, that you wanted this beautiful outcome. You wanted a quality outcome. And that's just coming kind of from inside. It's not, well, you have to hit all these targets to get your good score to be a good employee type thing. No, what if you just felt invested in creating this thing? There's other things that I'll talk about that affect quality as well. But even just that, even just feeling connected to your work, connected to the things that you're doing, just imagine how much better they would be if you could get that connection going.
It's me. Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Hello, everyone. It's Elise Seifert here for another edition of Flip Side of the Coin with Stephen and Elise.
Oh, hello.
Hey, Stephen. So today we were hoping to talk about a hobby that we enjoy doing together, but it's something that you really started, which is watching movies.
Yeah. So watching movies is something that is so ubiquitous at this point that just about everybody does it. But about 8 years ago, so 2015, is when I really got into watching movies. There is a book. It's an annual publication called 1001 Must-See Films. And each year they add or sometimes subtract films that are no longer on there. Doesn't make them any less viable or valuable, but they want to keep that number at 1001. And over the years, they've added and subtracted to the point where it's got to 1,245 films.
Wow. So they add each year and you just keep any ones that are removed on your personal list.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm going through the whole checklist. And at this point, out of those 1,245, I've seen over 1,200 of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And would you say that these films are on the list because they're good or because they're groundbreaking?
Yeah, that's interesting. So some of them are just stone cold classics.
Okay.
The movies like The Godfather and Jaws and The Wizard of Oz. But some of them are there because they inspired a whole line of cinema. So they're not all just Hollywood releases. Some of them are French cinema or Italian cinema. We've got some German cinema. I've even seen a few from Eastern Europe as well.
Okay.
It's very rare on this list that they come from Asia. So that's not been portrayed very much on this list. There are probably maybe a dozen or so.
Right. And would you say that you were always interested in films growing up, or is this just a new kind of interest you started?
Yeah, that's interesting. So my family and I, watching movies, it gave us our own little language, and quoting films became a regular thing. I would say when we communicate, 75% of the time, it is from some form of media, whether it's a TV show or a movie. You've seen us
yes.
talk, and if you haven't seen that, and sometimes it's something so minute, some tiny little line, if you don't know it, you don't know what we're talking about.
No, but that creates those inside jokes, and it's such a good time to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working through it. And again, like I said, I've got 38 more films to go. They did not publish a new one this year, as far as I know. So if they publish it, what I'm hoping to do is finally get all of them watched and then keep going. And it was a frenetic pace there for the first few years where I was watching several hundred every year.
Yes, you were moving so quickly. And it's something I appreciated you doing because it gave us a chance to watch some films together that I had never seen.
Yeah. In fact, I think it introduced you to one of your favorite directors now.
It did. Yeah. We watched some Alfred Hitchcock movies. And I don't think I ever would have sought them out. I always knew the name. I always knew that his films were highly regarded. But I don't think I really would have watched it unless you had taken on this list.
Yeah, absolutely. And it introduced me to some movies that, again, maybe I'd heard about, maybe I hadn't, but I'm a more adventurous film watcher from seeing this.
And do you think you have enjoyed all of the movies on this list?
In one word, no.
No.
But it hasn't stopped me from wanting to fulfill the dream of watching all of them.
Well, that's good. At least it doesn't discourage you.
Absolutely not.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time. I'm here with Sheila and Elise.
Hello.
Hey.
If you follow our Instagram, you'll have seen that I got these cool boom arms for the mics now.
Yeah.
So it actually kind of looks like a podcast studio a little bit, even though they're just attached to a table. And one of the things we can do with them is to actually stand up and use the mic. So Sheila and I are standing up.
Yeah, you're actually using your arms and everything.
Exactly. I can wave my arms. I don't have to worry about hitting the table. It's a lot of fun. Not a lot to report. We had a really busy weekend, still holiday type, because Sheila's whole family was visiting for a family dinner, and it was a pretty big event. It was fantastic. I'm sure Sheila will say more about that. And then the next day we had other family over, and we did a lot of stuff in the afternoon. And everybody seems to be back at work again. So I'm actually just kind of tired because I've been doing a lot of stuff and stayed up a bit late. I'm a little tuckered out. How are you doing, Sheila?
No, I'm good. Yeah, we had some great holidaying this weekend. So I have a few things to say. I wanted to try skating outside. I want to try to enjoy winter in Canada. So I actually went skating on Friday. So that was really fun. Went to the outdoor at the City Hall. I'm not very good, but I tried, and I'm going to continue to do that, I think. So that was something that was fun. We went to see a movie on Friday night. We saw the Wonka movie. I wasn't sure if I'd enjoy it, and it was fabulous. So that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, we had my family Christmas party on Saturday, and then on Sunday, I had a work Christmas party. I was really busy, but the highlight of the parties, believe it or not, was that I won fast money on Family Feud.
Right.
So we had, it was exciting because we played Family Feud, and, we were all playing, and no one won fast money in any of the games. And then I went up and I had 182 points. I was the first player.
Whoa.
So the second one only had to get like 19 points. Anyways, we won. Woo!
Sheila loves games.
I love games and I love to win. So that makes my day. What about you, Elise? How was your week?
Well, congratulations are in order. That sounds like you had an excellent score.
Thanks.
My week was lovely. We had a really relaxing week at home. It was our last week off before coming back to school. Mm-hmm. So I got a lot done around the house that I needed to do. I also had the opportunity to see some friends that I don't often see. So that was really great to get that social time in. And now it's back to work. So I start back to work this week and just getting back into routine. I was kind of in denial that it was going to happen. And now here we are. So I'm hoping that makes my week feel shorter the longer I'm in denial.
Okay.
But we'll see. So far, so good. And it's nice to be back into a routine. Just hoping to also get back into my exercise routine because I've kind of fallen off of that with the holidays.
Mm-hmm. And the eating routine. Like I want to get rid of all those Christmas cookies and chocolates and all that kind of stuff and get it out and get back into regular eating. That would be really great too.
That would be great. I know we still have so many in the house. Yeah. I can't believe how.
I know. They accumulate instead of getting eaten. They seem to accumulate. People keep bringing more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the tricky part of hosting, I think.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will catch you next week. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.